When, in January 1943, the USAAF's 56th Fighter Group arrived in the United Kingdom with its massive Republic P-47 Thunderbolts, RAF fighter pilots banteringly suggested that their American colleagues will be able to take evasive action when attacked by undoing their harnesses and dodging about the fuselages of their huge mounts. The Thunderbolt was certainly big. In fact, it was the largest and heaviest single-engine, single-seat fighter ever built. But sheer size was not to prove detrimental to the Thunderbolt's subsequent operational career. It was to undertake 546,000 combat sorties between March 1943 and August 1945, and only 0.7% of the fighters of this type dispatched against the enemy were to be lost in combat. The story of the Thunderbolt began in June 1940, when, realizing the deficiencies of the USAAF fighter equipment, new requirements were formulated at a meeting at Wright Field. Among the companies consulted with regard to the new fighter specification was the Young Republic Aviation Corporation, which possessed an invaluable background of fighter design experience inherited from its predecessor, the Seversky Aircraft Corporation. Republic's chief engineer, Alexander Kartveli, had at the time a new fighter on the drawing boards which had been designated XP-47. Conforming with the official policy prevailing at the time of its conception, the fighter was a relatively lightweight machine, designed around a 1,150 horsepower Allison-cooled V12 engine and carrying an armament of two 0.5-inch machine guns. But the estimated performance of the fighter project fell far short of what was now considered to be essential in the USAAF's future fighter. Kartveli therefore abandoned the Allison engine fighter and also scrapped the semi-completed prototype of the P-44 in order to concentrate all resources on the development of a radically different fighter. The first tasks of the Thunderbolt, which began on the 8th of April 1943, were high-altitude escort duties and fighter sweeps, in which the new aircraft acquitted itself despite the inexperience of its pilots. It was soon discovered that the heavy Thunderbolt could outdive any Luftwaffe, or for that matter Allied fighter, providing a decisive method of breaking off combat when necessary. But at low and medium altitudes, it could not match the rate of climb or maneuverability of German fighters. One shortcoming, which was even more marked in other Allied fighters, was that of insufficient range to permit deep penetration into Germany. But means were already being sought to add to the P-47B's 307 United States gallons of internal fuel. At the time of the Thunderbolt's European debut, radial-engine single-seat fighters were a rarity. The only other such fighter operational in Europe being the FW-190A. To prevent confusion between the two fighters of the opposing sides, the engine cowlings of the Thunderbolts were painted white, and white bands were painted around the vertical and horizontal tail surfaces. An appropriate comment on recognition standards appertaining at that time, as it would seem impossible to mistake the sleek and beautifully contoured German fighter for the portly Thunderbolt. During 1944, the Thunderbolt became operational in all active theaters of war excepting Alaska, and served with the Free French and Russian forces, as well as with the USAAF and RAF. The P-47D was primarily employed on long-range ground attack missions, bombing and strafing communications, airfields, bridges, and troop concentrations.